Welcome to Storytime with Ranger Dena. Today we're super excited to be filming from Meadow Creek, the Meadow Creek Trail, up the Selway. I'll give you all the details in the bonus footage. Today we wanted to do a special shout out to our Storytime with Ranger Dena, one of our most loyal viewers, Mary Ann, who stopped in at Lolo Pass and requested today's book, Those Darn Squirrels Fly South. If you have a book that you would like to have featured on Storytime with Ranger Dena, stop in at Lolo Pass Visitor Center. Maybe your book will be the next one we read. So, Those Darn Squirrels Fly South. Mary Ann, here's your story. You'll recall that we have read Those Darn Squirrels, so you know that this is going to be every bit as delightful as that one was. By Adam Rubin, illustrated by Daniel Salmieri. Those Darn Squirrels. Old Man Fuquire lived at the edge of town in a beautiful forest full of birds and squirrels. But he was such a grump. He scolded fireflies for being too bright. He yelled at clouds for being too fluffy. And when the lilacs bloomed, he pinched his nose with a clothespan so he wouldn't have to smell their scent. Even for a grump like Fuquire, it had been a glorious summer. He'd spent most of his time painting the colorful birds that visited his backyard. Sometimes, by accident, he painted a squirrel. Other times, the squirrels painted themselves. Then Fuquire would shake his old man fist and shout, "Those darn squirrels!" But now, it was fall. The weather had turned crisp, the leaves had changed colors, and soon the birds would fly south for the winter. Fuquire would have to endure the long, cold winter months alone. Well, not exactly alone. The squirrels would be there too. Normally, the squirrels spent winters playing ping pong, building ships in bottles, and knitting. But this year, they had other plans. They were curious about where the birds went for winter vacation, so they decided to follow them. Now, not many people know this, but squirrels have a comprehensive understanding of aerodynamic engineering. They built gyrocopters from pine cones. They built gliders from leaves. They even built a zeppelin from an old shopping bag. I'm glad you noticed that. If you look at the top of Bob's grocery bag, they're using a level. That's delightful. When the first frost arrived, the bonga birds took off, followed by the baba birds and the yaba birds. They circled the house, waved goodbye to Fuquire, and headed south. The flugelbird spent a few minutes scarfing up the last of the farfel seeds, then he took off too. Fuquire pouted as the sound of flapping wings faded into the distance. He turned to go inside and heard a rustling in the trees. A rustling followed by a whir followed by a buzz. It was the squirrels, launching their flying machines one by one. Some of the aircraft flew straighter than others, but eventually they all flew up, up, up and away from the harvest-colored treetops and into the cool blue autumn air. The old man could hardly believe his eyes. "Great googly moogly," he said. It's a whole flock of flying squirrels! I love these books. I do. The squirrels followed the flugelbird for days. They flew through the night. They flew through the rain. They even flew through turbulence. Finally, just when the squirrels thought they couldn't fly any longer, the flugelbird swooped down and landed gracefully on a beach. The squirrels landed with a crunch. The beach was so warm and beautiful, and the squirrels were so happy to be done flying, they decided to have a fiesta. They went swimming and ate mangoes with salt and lime. They played the marimba and danced the merengue. The party lasted all night long. Over the next few weeks, the squirrels made themselves right at home. There were many new plants to snack on. There were also many new birds to see. There were cocoa birds, kiki birds, and caramba birds. There were too many birds to count. One of the birds reminded the squirrels of someone they knew. Do you see which bird they think reminds them of someone that they knew? That's right. He looks just like Old Man Fuquire if Old Man Fuquire was a bird. Deep in the snowy woods, a strange noise woke Old Man Fuquire from his nap. It was coming from the telephone. He was getting a call. When he picked up the receiver, the operator asked if he would accept the charges for a long-distance call from the village of Santa Vaca. There was a chattering on the line. "Those darn squirrels!" shouted Fuquire. They're calling from a payphone. The old man missed the birds, and even though he would never admit it, he missed the squirrels too. So he decided to join them. Fuquire had a car that he kept under a tarp in a shed by the stream. He'd bought it in 1957 and had driven it only twice. He loaded it up with his easel, paints and brushes, fixed himself a snack of cottage cheese with pepper, and hit the road. Then he drove 12 miles an hour all the way to Santa Vaca. The nice people behind him had plenty of time to admire his car. Finally, Fuquire arrived in the little village. He spotted the flugelbird flying overhead and followed him to the beach. When he got out of the car, the squirrels gave him a big hug. Maybe it was the nice weather. Maybe it was the beautiful scenery. Maybe it was the squirrels dancing in his pants. But for the first time in a very long time, the old man laughed. Soon, Fuquire set up his easel and began to paint the local birds. "Da-ba-do-bo," sang the cocoa bird. "Ba-da-ba-bo," sang the kiki bird. Fuquire was overjoyed. "The birds here are even more amazing than the birds back home," he exclaimed. "Harumph," muttered the flugelbird. The sun was very hot. Fuquire sweated, but he kept on painting. Fuquire sweltered, but he kept on painting. Then, Fuquire slumped forward, face first, into his painting. The squirrels dragged the old man into the shade and gave him some water. He was as red as a bonga bird. He decided it was time to go home. The squirrels decided to go with him. They'd had a wonderful vacation. But after all, it was almost time for their annual snow fort building competition. They had one last snack of mango, then Fuquire waved goodbye to the birds, and they all piled into the car. The trip back home was much quicker for all of them. The squirrels drove most of the way. Those darn squirrels! I love these books. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you, Audrey, for being willing to go on these expeditions for Storytime with Ranger Dena. So, thank you everyone, and we'll see you next time. I decided it might be easier if I showed you on the map where we went. So we started at Powell, and we took Highway 12 all the way down until we got to Lowell, and then we turned and went up the Selway past Fen. Remember, we read Storytime at Fen Pond, and then on up, and now I need to switch maps. We went up the Selway 20 miles until we got to Slim's Camp. Right there, yep. Slim's Camp. And then we went up the Meadow Creek Trail, 726 for 2 miles. Highly recommend the hike. There's a beautiful beach back there that would be perfect to have a picnic.